Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, and welcome to our 15th lecture and the final lecture of the project management professional course. And we are still discussing the execution and monitoring and controlling of the project. And I think that in the last lecture, we started discussing and focusing on the emotional intelligence of the project manager and how to use the personal and interpersonal skills in order to build a healthy and mutual relationship with the stakeholders in general, in order to drive a positive behavior from the stakeholders and, of course, positive support for the project and the project objectives. So we explained the personal and interpersonal skills that the project manager can use, focusing on the emotional intelligence. And we also, I think, explained the active listening. The last thing that we discussed, as far as I remember, was to give feedback and to receive feedback as well, of course, since communication is a two-way process, as we have explained, and that feedback can be positive if the message is received or was received and understood as the sender intended, or can be negative if the receiver did not understand the message. We also mentioned that feedback is or provides an implicit acceptance of the message by the receiver. And I think I mentioned to you too that it's the receiver's responsibility to make sure that the message was received successfully and clearly. Okay, so this is, I think, the last thing that we have discussed in our last lecture. Now let's continue on and discuss some organizational theories that we can use in order to maximize efficiency and productivity in the project team. So basically, we mentioned several times that it's the project manager responsibility as well to keep the team motivated and to maximize efficiency and productivity of the team, solving problems and conflicts that the team might face, and meeting stakeholders' requirements as well. Here are some theories that you can use as a project manager, that you can take into consideration as a project manager, and that would help you keep the team motivated. The first theory, I think, is a very well-known theory. I think most of you probably have heard of this theory, which is the Maslow's hierarchy. Now, the Maslow's hierarchy, Maslow, of course, is the name of the scientist or the scholar who created this theory. And Maslow's indicated that there are certain human basic needs that you need to take into consideration when you try to motivate your team. And those basic needs are prioritized. And for that reason, we use this hierarchy or this pyramid of the human basic needs, where we start from the most basic need and going up into the hierarchy. So we have basically 5 layers of the human basic needs. Now, the most important, of course, basic human need is what? Is the physiological need, like, like the food, for instance, like breathing, right? Like sleep. So these are the most important, the most basic human needs that any human would try to fulfill in their life, right? And then in the next layer of the hierarchy comes the safety. So the need for feeling safe and secure They need to be in a place where you feel safe and secure and not threatened, right? So basically, as an employee, I need to provide them with this kind of safety. They don't feel threatened in the working environment. They don't feel threatened that they will get fired, for instance, and so on. The third layer focuses on the social need. So basically, this is the need of the employees to have a healthy social environment, which means good relationship with their colleagues, which means that there are no, this grunge that might exist in some working environments, no hatred. All relationships are healthy, and that the employees exist in a healthy relationship. The fourth level in the hierarchy is the ego. So basically, humans care, of course, about their ego, and they want to be or to feel respected. So they have, their inner ego, and they have the need to feel appreciated and respected by others as well. And the last layer is self-actualization. Here, self-actualization. So basically, humans also feel the need to, to leave an impact in their lives. They need to feel that they have fulfilled their inner, selves. They have left a fingerprint, for instance. So those are the 5 human basic needs in this priority, and managers should observe this priority. So basically, for instance, you cannot provide someone with, with ego, and you cannot play on this, level, or on the social need, for instance, while they don't have, or the salary that you give them cannot help them provide food for their families or for themselves. No, you need to look at and respect the priorities. So first of all, you need to provide them with something that fulfills their very basic needs: the food, the sleep, a place to stay, safety, they feel safe. Then the social need, then the ego, and last but not least, of course, the self-actualization. This is very important, level where employees strive to leave a fingerprint in the working environment, strive to feel that they are building a company themselves. They feel that the company belongs to them. This is, of course, very important as well, right? So this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory. Another theory is McGregor theory X and theory Y. McGregor, again, is another scholar, another scientist who indicated that there are 2 types of managers. And just to help you, remember those 2 types of managers, you have, we have here the manager of type X, and this manager looks like this, just for the sake, of understanding. So this is the X-type manager, X-type manager, and this is the Y-type manager. Again, just for the sake of, to help you memorize them. Okay, so this is a Y-type manager. What does this mean? An X-type manager is a manager that like you see here, that does not trust their employees, right? They think that the employees don't want to work, don't want, you know, to do their best. The employees try to avoid working hard. This is what the X-type manager thinks. And for this reason, the X-type manager keeps, you know, all the time micromanaging their team. They observe their team, they follow their team, they ask all the time, what's the progress, who did what, why did you do this, why didn't you do this? They are not good at delegation, they don't delegate to other people usually. So this is the X-type manager, okay? Those are the managers that don't trust their team and don't empower their team. While the Y-type managers, as you see here, are the opposite. Those are the managers who trust their team, empower their team, think that the team, the employees are willing to work, they are creative, they can come up with solutions, and we need to delegate to them, even if they make mistakes. Making mistake is part of the learning journey, okay? So this is the Y-type manager. Now, which manager do you think is better, the X-type manager or the Y-type manager? Which one will make a better manager, you think? Of course, the Y-type manager, right? Definitely, yes. And we want to be Y-type managers all the time. And this is what you should do, of course. And I think we discussed so many times, you know, the servant leadership role, right? Where the leader basically empower the team to be self-organized and self-managed. Of course, assuming that you have the right team. This is maybe sometimes the issue when you don't have the right team on board. Then you tend to be, or at least for a start, to start with them as an X-type manager. But later on, when they, you know, go through the ladder of team building until they reach the performing stage and they're capable of doing their tasks, then you need to practice, of course, the Y-type manager role. Okay, so this is the theory of X and Y for McGregor's. Another theory is McClelland achievement theory that has 3 components. McClelland indicated that achievement, the desire to achievement and the drive to achievement, relates to success, power to influence other people, and affiliation to belong a team. So basically, if you want your people to be driven by achievement, then you need to motivate them by success, by giving them power to influence other people, and by giving them the feeling of belonging, the affiliation or belonging to their, you know, community, to their team, to their organization. This is McClelland's achievement theory. Another theory is Hertzberg motivation theory, or what we call the hygiene factors. This is called the hygiene factors. Hertzberg is again the name of the scholar. Hertzberg indicated that there are 2 types of motivators. Okay, so a person is motivated by 2 types of motivators, or 2 factors, which are internal factors, intrinsic, we call them internal factors. So those are the motivators that come from inside the person, like the desire to achieve, like the desire of getting recognized, the desire of leaving again a fingerprint. So those are internal, intrinsic motivators. And of course, we have the external motivators that come from the external environment, such as the good salary, the good working place, the good relationship with the other people in the team. Those are external motivators. Now, what do you think? Which are the stronger motivators, the internal motivators or the external motivators? Which motivators motivate more? Now, according to Herzberg, of course, the intrinsic motivators are more powerful, right? When you have something inside you that motivates you to achieve or to build or to create. But Herzberg indicated that internal motivators, intrinsic motivators or internal motivators will not work until you provide a clean or a hygiene external motivators. So in order for persons to be motivated from inside, you need to provide them with a clean or a hygiene environment. That means you need to provide them with good salary, good working place, good relationship with their fellow colleagues. Okay, so, and that's why it's called the hygiene factors as well. So basically, you first make sure that the external factors or the external environment is clean. You have the clean, or hygiene motivators, and then you work on the internal and more powerful motivators. Okay, so those basically are some of the theories that you can use in order to keep your team motivated. Another theory, by the way, we call it the expectancy theory. Expectancy theory. This theory indicates that the higher the level of expectancy a team member has that they will receive a reward or recognition, the more motivated they will feel. You get my point? So basically, if you don't expect that you will be rewarded, you will not work well. If the expectancy is zero, if you don't have any expectations, if you are sure that whatever effort you put in the work, it will go unrewarded, then your motivation is close to zero. But if you expect the opposite, if you expect that if you put a lot of efforts and hard work in the project, then you will get a big reward, then you feel motivated, right? And this makes you more motivated. Okay, so this is the expectancy theory of also motivating the project staff and the project team. Okay, any question about those theories? You might get 1 or 2 questions in the exam about the motivational theories or the organizational theories on how to keep your team motivated. Okay. So here are some guidelines, final guidelines about building emotional intelligence with key stakeholders. Again, you need to recognize your own emotions and behavior and assess how these emotions are driving your behavior. You need to observe how your emotions are affecting those who are around you. You might sometimes want to take some physical, some notes about your physical and non-verbal cues and of those of the others in order, to understand more about the behavior of you and of the others. Interpret those cues against the situation. Why did I do this? Why did that person made this? What drives their behavior? What were their emotions at that point, and so on. And you remain mindful of the emotions of others and mirror the behaviors of others. Sometimes by mirroring the behaviors of others, you create this relationship. When they smile, you smile back, for instance. When they lean forward, you lean forward. So this is what we call mirroring. So this helps also, bonding, creating a bond between you and the others, and practice controlling or changing your emotions to better suit the situation, according to the situation. So this is what you can try to practice in order, to build more effective emotional intelligence and more effective relationships with stakeholders. Okay, with this we conclude the discussion about emotional intelligence and creating a healthy relationship with the stakeholders. Let's move on now to another aspect in the execution, which is managing impediments, obstacles, and blockers. So, of course, especially when we start executing the project work, there will be some impediments, things that will hinder the work, will make the work slower, for instance, and some obstacles that I need to overcome in order to proceed with the work. And maybe sometimes we will be faced with blockers that will cause the project to completely stop until we find a solution for this blocker. Okay, so we will discuss how to deal with those, assessment and tracking those impediments, obstacles, and blockers, and how to handle them and create resolutions for them. Okay, so again, what is the definition of impediments, obstacles, and blockers? Impediments are situations, conditions, or actions that slow down. They don't completely stop the work, but they slow down or hinder the work. Like, for instance, until now, we don't have decision where to store files. So this slows down the work because we're not sure where to store our files. Okay, but it does not stop the work completely. Obstacles are barriers that can be overcome with some effort. So I need to put here some effort or strategy in order to overcome those obstacles so we can proceed with the project. For instance, we need work permits to be signed in order to access that site. Okay, so I need to go and obtain those work permits in order for the team can go and start working at the site. Okay, so you need to put this effort in order to overcome this obstacle. Blockers are events or conditions that cause stoppage, complete stoppage in work or any other advancement. Like, for instance, a legal action was made to stop the work until we get a clearance. We need a clearance in order to proceed with legal clearance or a security clearance or whatever it is in order to proceed with the job. So basically now this is blocking the work. I need to obtain this clearance in order to be able to continue with the project work. So there are like 3 levels of, of impediments that I need to address in the project. And this needs sometimes for you to assess the backlog, because overcoming those impediments or obstacles need some effort, as we mentioned, and these efforts would be included in the backlog as tasks that we need to do in order to overcome those blockers or those obstacles. So I need to assess the product backlog, the scheduled activities, some work items, and check where is the hindrance, where is the blocker, how can we overcome them, what are the tasks that we need to do them. And then again, it depends on the value of the work that we are trying to do. Because sometimes, if we are trying to do something that is of less value and that is causing a lot of hindrance, a lot of slowing down, then we might think of eliminating it completely, or try to explore alternatives of how to do the work without, going this through cycle of, finding out how to overcome this blocker, for instance. Okay, so again, I'll need to look. Now, this is, of course, in the agile approaches, right? Because we're discussing backlog. So I need to look at the backlog. what are the items, what are the user stories that might be causing some hindrance, causing some impediments, and how to do we think that they are of a good value or of a low value, so we can probably, you know, postpone them until later point or completely eliminate them from the backlog. So I need to look at this as an option, whether some of the items in the backlog or some of the tasks that are assigned to the team can be completely eliminated in order to avoid those obstacles and those blockers. Of course, in Agile as well, we have a very good tool that would help us identify early those impediments and those blockers and obstacles, right? Which is the daily stand-up meeting. Now, you remember that every day in Agile approaches, we have this daily stand-up meeting every day, every time at the same place, where everyone of the development team should attend. It's mandatory basically for all of the team to attend the stand-up meeting, and everyone should answer the 3 questions. What has been done since the last meeting? What needs to be done before the next meeting? And what does anyone need help with, or what are the impediments? What are the issues that we are facing? What is hindering us from doing our work? So this is a discussion item in every stand-up, in every daily stand-up meeting. And this helps us identify any impediment or obstacle or blocker early. I think I mentioned to you the golden rule, right? The later you discover a problem, the more expensive it will become to solve. The later that you discover it, and the later that you try to work it, the more expensive it will become. So basically, we try all the time to identify issues, blockers, impediments as soon as possible in order to work to resolve them as soon as possible. Otherwise, this will become very expensive and time-consuming if you don't discover them early. If you discover them late, if you try to work to resolve them late, then they will become more expensive to resolve. And the tool here that will help you early identify those impediments or issues or blockers are the daily stand-up meeting in Agile. Now, of course, when you identify impediments, you need to document them and you need to track them. And this can be done again using task boards, using software applications, using any tool that you might want to use. But basically, you need to identify those impediments and identify the tasks that need to be done in order to overcome those impediments or those obstacles and blockers. And those tasks might be included again in the task board. So basically you can track the resolution of those impediments. Now, impediments can also turn into risks that I need to include in the risk register. So basically I need to review the risks that are documented in the risk register and the risk list and update the risk register according to the impediments or obstacles or blockers that we have identified, and prepare as well, of course, I need to prepare a response plan for those risks. Okay, so basically this is how we handle impediments. And remember that project managers should act as servant leaders. So basically, in many cases, they are responsible for removing those impediments and obstacles, right? So servant leaders aim to clear obstacles for the project team. Project managers seek to optimize the workplace by removing the impediments, whether it's, for instance, physical impediments, like the team space is not comfortable, the team are not comfortable with the working environment, the ACs are not working well, the equipment is not performing well, for instance. So the physical aspects of the working environment, or even the non-physical aspects of the working environment, like for instance, if someone has some issues with the administration, then we try to help them resolve their issue with the administration as well. We also remove distractions to help them focus. We also shield them from interruptions from other stakeholders. We try to act like a shield for those team members. So whenever there are requests, we receive those requests and then we transfer them to the team. Okay, so again, it's the project manager's responsibility to try to remove those impediments and obstacles, allowing the team to focus on doing their job. Here are some guidelines that help you again with this. So discuss all the time with the team and evaluate the impediments. Review previous efforts that has been done to remove those impediments and why they were successful or not successful. Discuss impact of these impediments and whether you should turn them into risks again and plan for them as risks. Sometimes it's possible to relay the impediments to external sources. So I might, relay this legal impediment to a lawyer or to a law office that will help us obtain the clearances that we need. Establish a single point of contact in the team. Basically, most of the time it's the project manager or an SME, subject matter expert, that will protect the team or shield the team from interruptions by being the single point of contact. So if any one of the stakeholders needs something, they will contact only this person. They cannot contact all the team or any other member of the team. So basically we need to keep the team again focused. And if you have any requests or requirements, you contact only this person, the single point of contact. We create an action plan and schedule it for implementation for overcoming the impediments. And we follow up and communicate. And when resolved, again, we need to document the lessons learned. We document the lessons learned in order to benefit from those in future projects. Okay. Those impediments, obstacles, and blockers, of course, need also to be prioritized as well, because you cannot, for instance, start resolving impediments with low priority while you have a greater priority obstacle or blocker. So you need to prioritize those impediments, obstacles, and blockers and refine the levels as needed. And then based on their priority, you put together your action plan based on their impact on the project as well. And then you communicate the priorities to different stakeholders and you work to resolve those impediments. Now, you can use some of the ways that we have discussed previously in a prioritization. You can use the same ways or the same tools in order to prioritize those obstacles and impediments. For instance, the fist of five, the t-shirt sizing, the unique naming, the planning, poker, all of those tools that we used also in prioritizing user stories before, if you remember, right? You can use the same tools as well in order to prioritize the impediments, obstacles, and blockers and start with the most important to the least important. And with this, we conclude discussing the impediments and obstacles or blockers of the project. Now let's move on to a very important subject while executing and monitoring the project, which is managing and measuring performance of the project. This is, of course, very important for the project manager and very important for the top management because they need to know how the project is proceeding. Is the project proceeding well according to the plan, or is it not proceeding well? Is it behind the schedule or ahead of schedule? Is it over budget or we have cost saving, for instance? So I need to draw those, measures, and I need to draw those indicators and put them in performance reports that I can submit to the top management in order for them to know the status of the project. So we will be discussing measuring the ongoing performance of the project. What are the most important KPIs and metrics that we can use in order to measure the performance? What are the different approaches that we can use in measuring the performance of the project? And what are the different reports that we also can use in reporting the project status to the management and to the customer as well? So we start with some guidelines on how to measure the ongoing progress of the project. First of all, especially in agile approaches, when you try to measure the performance of your project, you focus again on the value. The customer or the top management look at the value. For them, for the top management or the customer, it's not important at all if you did 1,000 tasks. You did probably 1,000 tasks in the project, but you haven't created any value, any working product, for instance. So for them, the value is zero, even though you have done so many things and the team has delivered so many assignments on time, but there is nothing, there is no tangible value that has been created. So it means for the stakeholders, for the customer, for the top management, that the progress is zero because the value that has been created is zero. So basically, this is very important for you to consider. When you want to measure the performance, the best way to measure the performance is by measuring the value of the work that has been done. And the value is defined all the time by the customer or the top management. Okay, so basically they will tell you what their expectations, what is valuable to them, what are the things that they value in the project that you need to create, again, as early as possible and on continuous basis. What are the targets? What are the baselines? What are the metrics that are important for them that they need you to measure? They will tell you basically what are the important metrics and what are the important KPIs, key performance indicators that they need you to measure and that they use to measure the value. Okay, so basically this is what you measure, and you measure it regularly. You collect the data on regular intervals, so probably every week, for instance, and you present the data to them in order to report the progress of the project. And you compare the progress, of course, with the baseline that has been approved by the management again. And you look for ways to improve the performance, to improve the success, or correct the issues if you have issues, or correct the progress if we have, slow progress or deficient progress. Okay, if the progress is not meeting the expectations. So this is the whole approach and how we look at measuring the performance of the project. Now, of course, according to the methodology, traditional approaches tend to focus on the schedule. They measure the progress of the project by looking at the schedule. So this is the schedule baseline that has been approved by the management, and this is the actual schedule, and they compare the baseline with the actual schedule, and they try to take indicators by looking at the planned versus actual in order to determine the progress of the project. This is how the traditional approaches usually do in order to measure the performance. But again, for us, this is not the best approach of measuring the progress. The best approach for measuring the progress is the approach that the agile approaches use, which is looking at the value. So comparing the total amount of work delivered and accepted. So we have delivered a work that was accepted by the customer. We have created some value. So we compare it. What is the value that we have achieved comparing to the estimated work that we need to complete. So for instance, we have 20 user stories. We have developed 10 user stories, and those 10 user stories were accepted by the customer. Then the progress is 50% because 10 user stories were developed and accepted out of 20. So basically the progress is 50%, okay? This should be reviewed at the end of each sprint or at the end of each iteration. As you know, we review the completed work and the accepted work, and we conduct scheduled reviews, the retrospectives, the lessons learned, the retrospectives again at the end of each sprint, and we determine the rate at which deliverables are produced, validated, and accepted. So after a while, I know that in average, for instance, the team is producing 10 user stories every iteration, for instance. So this is how we are progressing. This is how we are proceeding. This is the velocity. We call it the velocity as well of the team. The velocity of the team. The velocity means the speed, okay? So the velocity, the average velocity of the team is like 10 user stories per iteration. It means in every iteration, they are able to develop 10 user stories that are accepted, okay? And this is the measure of, again, of how the project is progressing in Agile. Other key performance indicators that can be used in order to measure the performance of the project are called the key performance indicators, KPIs. And KPIs must be SMART. SMART stands for specific, measurable, so you can measure them, achievable, they are realistic, the team can achieve those indicators, relevant, they are relevant to the job that we are doing, and time bound, time constrained or time bound, okay? So when you set a KPI that you will use to measure the performance of your project, you need to make sure that the KPI is SMART. For instance, again, it might be the number of user stories that the team is developing in each iteration. This is a SMART KPI because it's a specific number of user stories developed. And it's measurable, we can measure it, and it's achievable because, for instance, the team is capable of achieving 10 user stories. It's relevant because it relates to the job, and it's time bound because we say in every iteration. It's timely bound in iteration, okay? Other KPIs that you might hear of or come across, the Net Promoter Score. Now, this is a KPI that we use in marketing, for instance. If you want to measure the satisfaction of the customers, for instance, we developed a user story, and we want to measure the satisfaction of the users or the customers of this user story. So we might use this KPI, which is the Net Promoter Score, NPS, which depends basically, or which is calculated using this formula. The NPS equals the percent of promoters minus the percent of detractors. Now, promoters, we will do a survey, small survey, very small survey, asking the customers, what do you think, or how satisfied are you by the user story that we have developed for you? From 0 to 10, how do you rate your satisfaction? Now, the people that will rate satisfaction by 9, 10, are what we call promoters. We call them promoters. Those are very satisfied by the user stories that we have developed. So we call them promoters because they will tell other people that they are very satisfied. But people who rated their satisfaction between 0 and 6, we call them detractors because they will tell other people that it was a catastrophe. Okay, we call them detractors. So basically, this is what we will do. We'll take this survey and we will see the percent of promoters who answered 9, 10, minus the percent of detractors who answered 0, 6. This is what we call the net promoter score. And of course, the higher the score is, the better that is the satisfaction is. Again, most of the time, this is used in marketing and measuring the satisfaction of the customers. Another way of evaluating the customer requirements is by doing an A/B testing. For instance, the user has requested us to develop a story. Then we might create 2 versions of the story, version A and version B, and demo the story in the 2 versions to the users and check which version they like more, this version or this version. We also might take the percentage and of course go with the highest. So if 80%, for instance, of the customers like this version, then this is the version that we will carry on with, and that it will be official and formal and formally accepted, and that we will carry on with. We call this A/B testing, where we develop, different choices, different alternatives, and ask the customer or the user to tell us their opinion and to help us decide on the best alternative or the best option. Okay. Another important theory that we can use in measuring performance is the management by objectives, where we basically set objectives for the team that they need to achieve. So for instance, we might set an objective for the development team to develop 10 user stories every iteration. This is your objective. The objective should be challenging, difficult, but yet attainable. They can do it. It's difficult, but they can do it. 10 user stories is achievable. It's difficult, but it's achievable. And then we check, are they capable of delivering this object? Then we increase this object a little bit more. So in the next iteration, you are required to deliver, for instance, 12 user stories. Okay, and we go so on. If they are not capable of delivering it, then we discuss with them why they were not capable of delivering this objective. And we again adjust our objectives accordingly. Okay, so this is the approach that we call management by objectives. We start by setting the objective. We check the capability and ability of the team to achieve those objectives, and then we fine-tune accordingly. Okay, and this, of course, can be repeated until we reach the most efficient objectives or targets. Okay, any questions so far, ladies, gentlemen? Any questions so far? Okay, let's take a break now, 15 minutes, before we start discussing a very important tool for measuring performance, which is the earned value management. This needs a little bit focus from your side because it has some formulas. It's not difficult at all, but you need to understand the concept, the major or the core concepts of the earned value management, and then you will find it very easy. So let's take 15 minutes break, and then we continue with explaining the earned value management. Thank you, everyone. So we're still discussing measuring and managing performance in the project. we explained some basics about how to measure the performance in the project. And we mentioned that the best way of measuring performance in the project is using the value, and not only the progress of tasks or the progress of schedule, but the value that has been created versus the value that is remaining or the value that should have been created. So basically the focus is on the value. And for this also, we have another tool that we can use in measuring and managing performance, which is the earned value management. And let's start explaining how to measure performance using this tool. Now, let me remind you that we probably have developed a WBS, the work breakdown structure for the project, when we defined the scope of the project, which might look something similar to this, right? And so basically, let's assume that this is the WBS of the project, which represents the scope baseline of the project. And then when we develop the cost baseline of the project, we budgeted basically for each work package, we budgeted we estimated the cost and added to that the contingency reserve, right? So let's assume that we budgeted, for instance, 6,000 for this work package, 5 for this work package, 3 for this work package, 7 for this work package, 2 for this work package. And then we did a bottom-up, right, aggregation. So basically, this control account, for instance, will be budgeted 6,5 plus 3 equals 14. And this is budgeted for 9. And then you have the 9 plus 14 equals 23. This is what we have called, if you remember, this is what we have called the BAC, right? The budget at completion. Completion or complete, okay? Which represents, again, the cost baseline, which represents the project estimated cost plus the contingency reserve without the management reserve, because we should not use the management reserve in managing performance, right? And then we drew a shape that we call the S shape, right? Which represents the expected or the planned expenditure right from day one in the project until we reach the last day of the project, right? So basically, in the last day of the project, we should finish or consume the BAC, the budget at completion, which is here, for instance, 23, right? And then we did, based on this cost baseline curve, or we called it also, if you remember, we called it what? We called it the planned value, right? So this is the planned value. This is the value that we plan to achieve in time. Okay? And based on this, we determined, for instance, the funding requirements. So we determined how much money we need, for instance, in the first month, in the second month, and the third month, fourth, fifth, and so on. Okay, until again we finish the project completely. So for instance, you need in the first month maybe 7, in the second month you need 8 plus 7, so equals 15, and so on, right? This is what we did in plan. And now let's assume that the project has started already, and that we are now in the second month. So we are here today. Okay, this is the second month. How do I now measure the performance of the project today? What questions do I need to ask in order to measure the performance of the project as per today? Now, probably the most important question that comes to our mind in this day is, what have we actually achieved in the project until today? What are the things that we have achieved in the project? So if we ask the project manager, what are the things that you have achieved in the project so far? And the project manager answered that until today, we have completed this work package, and we have completed this work package, and we have completed this work package as well. Okay, this is what we call the earned value. So what is the earned value? The earned value is the value or the budgeted cost of the work that has been completed. What is the work that has been completed here? According to the project manager, according to the reports that we get from the site, this and this and this work package and this work package and this work package has been completed and accepted. So the earned value equals what? The budgeted cost of those, which is 6 plus 5 plus 3 equals 14, correct? Are you following? So the earned value is 14. But what was the planned value? As per the plan, what should have been completed until today as per the plan? As per the plan, this is today, we should have completed only this work package and this work package equals what? 6 plus 5 equals 11. Is this correct or not? I think it's obvious, right? So what is the performance here in terms of schedule? Is the project performing well or bad? In terms of performance, in terms of schedule, is the project performing well or bad? The project is performing well, because obviously we planned to complete only 2 work packages with the value of 11, but we ended up completing 3 work packages with the value of 14, which means that we are ahead of schedule by a value of 3, obviously, because we completed this work that we did not expect that we will be able to complete it by the second month. Is that clear? Okay, so this is what we call the schedule variance. there is a variance between what we have actually completed and what we have planned to complete. So we completed actually 14, while we planned to complete only 11. So we ended up ahead of schedule by a value of 3, which is this work package valued at 3, or that has the budgeted cost of 3. So this is the schedule variance. And since the variance is positive, it means that we are ahead of schedule. Now imagine if it was the other way around. If, for instance, we only achieved 6, we only completed this work package while we were supposed to complete those 2 packages. So 6 minus 11, it will be minus 5. The schedule variance would be minus 5. So the variance, when negative, it means that we are behind the schedule. But here in this situation, the variance is positive, plus 3. It means we are ahead of a schedule with a work valued at 3. Okay? So this is measuring the performance of the project in terms of schedule. Okay, but I need also to measure the performance of the project in terms of cost. I need to know the performance of the project in terms of cost. Is the project performing well in terms of cost or not? To know this, or to get to know this, I need to ask another question. Okay, we have completed these 3 work packages that have the value of 14, or that we budgeted 14 for them. But what is, or what was, the actual cost that we spent in order to complete them, in order to complete those 3 work packages? We budgeted in the plan 14. This is the budgeted amount, 14. But what did we actually spend to complete them? Then I need to look at my invoices, at my accounting system, through all the expenses. And let's assume that we find out that the actual cost was 16. What does this mean in terms of cost performance? Is the cost performance good or bad? What do you think? Yes, the cost performance is bad, because the 3 work packages, we planned for them to cost 14, but actually they costed us 16, which means that we have a cost variance, which is the variance, the difference between the work value that we have completed versus what we have actually spent. Basically, we planned to spend 14, but we ended up spending 16, which means there is a cost overrun of 2, so minus 2. And again, when you see minus, it means bad performance, right? So basically, you exceeded the budget, the budgeted amount, by 2, obviously, right? The work that you have completed should have cost you only 14, but you actually spent 16 to complete it, which means that you incurred an overcost of 2. Okay? If you understand those, then you understand everything in the earned value. So basically, what I need to know in order to measure the performance of the project is, what is the value of the work that we have achieved? that we have actually achieved. What is the value of the work packages that we have completed, which here, for instance, equals 14. The value of the work actually completed. And then I'll compare this with how much did it actually cost us. So it actually costed us 16, for instance. We did a work that was supposed to cost us 14, but it actually cost us 16. So this is a bad performance, right, in cost. And I need to compare it again, the earned value, the cost, sorry, the value of the work that is actually achieved with the planned value. What is the value that I planned to achieve? So per the schedule, we should have only completed 2 work packages with the value of 11. So this means that we are ahead of schedule and we completed a work package that we were not supposed to complete that is valued at 3. Okay, and with this you calculate the variances. The variance in cost, so the cost variance, and the schedule variance. And again, if the variance is positive, then this indicates a good performance. But if the variance is negative, it indicates a bad performance. And in this specific scenario, as you see, we have a good schedule performance, but we have a bad cost performance. We are ahead of schedule, but we ended up spending more than what we budgeted. And this happens in a lot of projects, right? In so many projects, we might spend more in order to be ahead of schedule, right? So the performance of the schedule is good, but the performance of the cost is bad. In other projects, it might be the other way around. You might be behind the schedule, but saving cost. So the performance of cost is good, the performance of schedule is bad. And it might be both good, so schedule is bad, is good, and cost is good. And it might be also both bad. We are behind the schedule and we are over budget. Okay, so all scenarios are open. Okay, what can we do more or calculate more? How about if instead of calculating variance, which is of course minus, because we are variance is the difference, right? How about we use another indicator, which is the index? So instead of subtracting, let's do dividing. So we call this the schedule performance index, SPI, which equals, again, instead of subtracting, I will do a division. The value of the work that has been completed over the value of the work that has been planned, PV. So instead of minus, use divide. In this scenario, you have completed 14. You planned to complete 11. So basically 14 divided by 11 equals 1.27, which means that you are 27% ahead of time, right? You are progressing with a speed of 1.27 or 27%. of the original speed. You are ahead on time, ahead of time with 27%, right? Which means, of course, that if you continue on this with this SPI, you will finish early. You will finish your project early, right? So, for instance, if the project was supposed to take 6 months, then, and assuming that we will keep progressing at this speed, at this scheduled performance indicator, then we will finish the project. How can you calculate this? Forecasted project end equals 6 divided by this index 1.107, which equals, now if you divide 6.127, equals what? It means you will finish in 4.7 months. Okay, because again, you are progressing with 27% ahead of time. So you don't need 6 months to finish. You will finish in 4.7 months. Does that make sense? Now, with the same judgment, do you think that we will finish the project at 23, or do we need more or less to finish the project? Can I calculate how much the project will cost us, assuming that we will continue with this performance index? Now, the cost variance is bad, right? Which means if we continue with this cost performance, the project will cost us more than 23. But how to calculate it? Again, we will use what? Instead of subtraction, we will use an index. So we'll use a cost performance index. CPI, which is equal to EV instead of subtraction, AC divided by AC, which equals here, of course, here it will be less than 1 because it's a bad performance. So 14 divided by 16 equals 0.87. Which means that for each dollar that we are spending in the project, we're only creating a value of 87 cents, right? Which means that, of course, we will need more money in order to finish the project, right? And how do I calculate that? With the same formula here. So basically, this is what we call the estimate at completion. Estimate at completion equals the original budget, 23, divided by the cost performance index that we have indicated. So 23 divided by 0.87 will give us 23, 0.87 equals 26, almost 0.5. So the project will cost us, instead of 23, if the performance continues in the same way, this project will cost us 26.5. So we will be over budget with, this is what we call variance at completion. So when we finish the project, the variance at completion will be the difference between the original budget at completion minus the estimate at completion, which is 23 minus 26.5 equals minus 3.5. We will be over budget with 3.5. Okay. We call this formulas forecasting because we are forecasting what will the project cost when it finishes. And another question that the management might ask, how much more money do you need in order to finish the project? From today, okay, so they might ask us, now you are here in this point, how much more money do you need in order to finish the project? Now, according again to these calculations, we know this is what we call ETC, okay, estimate to complete. So to complete the project, how much money do I need? I know now how much the project is estimated at completion. I know now that the project is estimated to finish at 26.5. And I know that I spent already actual cost, which is 16. Okay, so 26.5 minus the actual cost that we have spent so far, which is 16, equals how much? 9.5, is that correct? Or 10.5? 10.5. Yes, 10, sorry, 0.5. So this is the money that I need to finish my project. Again, assuming that we will continue in this, you know, with this performance. Okay, this is the estimated to complete. Now again, the management will come to us, and of course they are not happy now, right? Because we forecast that we will be over budget by 3.5. So now the management will come and ask, okay, what if we don't have this extra money? We need you to finish the project at 23 exactly. What or how can we improve the performance? What is the cost performance index that we should be able to deliver from today until we finish the project in order to finish exactly at 23 without asking for extra money? This is what we call the TCPI, to complete performance index. To complete performance index, to be able to complete the project without extra money. Or basically, to complete the remaining work with the remaining money. This is the TCPI, right? So TCPI is remaining work over remaining money. Now, what is the remaining work here? All of the work is 23, right? Which is the budget at completion. But we finished, from the 23, we finished the year value, which is 14. Now, this basically is the remaining work, right? 23 minus 14 equals 9. This is the remaining work that I need to do. And what is the remaining money that I still have in my pocket? Again, the budget, the 23, minus what we have spent, actually the actual cost. So this is the remaining money, 23, and we actually spent 16. which means the money that we still have is 7, right? So basically this is the TCPI. Now, if you calculate it, again, 23 minus 14 equals 9, yes, over 23 minus 16 over 7, right? Which equals 9 over 7 equals what? 1.28. Now, if this is the TCPI. If you want to finish your project without asking extra money, for each dollar that you will spend from now on, from today, from now on, for each dollar that you will spend in the project, you need to achieve or to create a value of $0.28. If you can do this, you will finish your project exactly at 23. You will not need any extra money. Okay? That is the earned value, and those are the formulas of the earned value. Now, fortunately, all of these formulas and calculations can be done very easily in any PMIS, Project Management Information System, like Microsoft Project or Primavera. And for that reason, you probably will not get any calculations in the exam. The new exam does not really have calculations, but you might get questions for, again, for understanding. So if the variance is, if the cost variance is positive, what does this mean? If the schedule variance is negative, what does this mean? Are you ahead of schedule or behind the schedule? So this is what you need to know, okay? If the index is above 1, if the index is below 1. Now remember, it's very easy, right? If the variance is positive, you are always, the performance is good. If the variance is negative, performance is bad. If the index is above 1, then the performance is good. If the index is below 1, then the performance is bad. Okay? Of course, I'm sure that you need to review this lecture. It's very important, or these calculations, but I think it's fairly clear and understandable, I hope. So you won't find a difficulty in understanding it. Okay? Any questions? Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Great. If you don't have any questions, then let's go back to the presentation. So basically, again, it's the three elements of the earned value. The earned value, the budgeted cost, the value of the work we actually completed. This is the actual cost we spent to complete the work. And this is the value or the budgeted cost of the work we planned to complete. Okay, and if you understand that, you understand all of these calculations. Now, of course, again, this is the planned value in violet. Okay, so this is what we have planned to spend from day 0 to the last day. The management reserve should not be touched, as we mentioned, right? And today I need to compare now. First of all, what we have actually completed, this is the earned value, and what we have actually spent, this is the actual cost, okay, until today. And based on this, if we completed more than what we spent, now this is the way, the other way around here, right? We here in this scenario, you see that the actual cost is a lot higher than the earned value, which means that the performance is very bad, the cost performance. The actual cost is a lot more higher than the earned value. The planned value is a lot more than the earned value, which means that this project is a catastrophe. It's behind the schedule and it's over budget. See, because the earned value is the least amount here, comparing to the planned value and comparing to the actual cost. Now, of course, that notice that the earned value and the actual cost are calculated until today. We don't have them after today. After today is a forecast, estimate to complete, as I mentioned. Forecast, we cannot be sure. Only the planned value is continuous because this is what we have planned for and approved from the management. Okay, I hope then this is clear to you. So it depends basically on variance analysis, as you have seen and as we have explained. Okay. Do you need a break, like 10 minutes, or is it okay to continue? Because I need to explain now the, which is not difficult at all also. It's another tool that we use in Agile to measure the performance, which is the cumulative. We call it the cumulative flow diagram. This is the cumulative flow diagram. I think we can continue with this, right? Okay, we will continue then. So the cumulative flow diagram, or the CFD, this diagram that you see here, basically represents the Kanban board that we might be using in the Agile project. So here, each color represents one of the columns in the Kanban board. How about, let's take things easier. There's a video I want to show you that explains the cumulative flow diagram. And let's go to this video. Okay, you can see the video. We'll start.
The aim of a cumulative flow diagram is to show you the stability of your process over time. It tracks and accumulates each task that is ever entered or progressed to.
So basically here you have the time axis. Okay, and for instance, in this day, we got a requested task. So now the number of tasks requested is 1. Okay, and we keep plugging. Now another task was requested, so the number of tasks requested now is 2. The team has started working on 1 task, so now at this point, at this date, for instance, we have 1 task in green, which is in progress, and 1 task in orange, which is requested. So 1 task is requested and 1 task is in progress, and so on.
Whenever you complete a task, the number in your process's done stage will rise permanently.
Done. Now we have 1 task done and 2 tasks in progress, for instance. And then in this date, we have 1 task done, 2 tasks in progress, and a new task that has been requested, and so on.
Each stage has an arrival and a departure line. The vertical distance between them visualizes the number of tasks that were in this stage of your workflow at the time. The horizontal distance.
So basically the vertical distance tells you about how many tasks is in this phase, for instance, is in progress. So when this distance is huge, this means what? This indicates what? A bottleneck, right? Because you remember the Kanban, right? If you have so many tasks in one column, then this indicates probably what? A bottleneck in the next column, right? While the horizontal represents the time from, for instance, from being requested to done. So time that the task took from being requested to done. And this time, of course, whenever it's shorter, it's better. But if it's long, this means what? We are slow in progress because we are taking so much time from the task from being requested to being done.
Between your first and last stage shows the approximate average cycle time for your tasks, meaning the time it took you to progress a task from being requested to done. Let's take a look at the workflow of an example software development team.
Another example.
Their process involves 5 stages.
5 stages, so 5 columns on the Kanban board.
A quick look at the chart tells you more about their approximate average cycle time of 2 weeks, along with the number of tasks.
So we call this cycle time, or sometimes we call it the lead time, which represents, again, the time that a task takes from the time it was requested to the time it was done. So basically here in average, it's 14 days. For how many tasks? For around 110 tasks, okay?
Completed during that period. In order to determine whether their process is stable, we need to monitor how the chart progresses in time. If the distance between the arrival and departure lines grows in parallel, then most likely we've got nothing to worry about. However, if it starts to expand rapidly, then tasks
again, this means
are
what?
arriving faster than they can be
Bottleneck.
processed, and we need to take action. Remember, a properly built cumulative flow diagram always flows upward or sideways. If you ever see a line going down, then the chart is incorrect, since tasks should never disappear. This is one of the most advanced
This is cumulative. It always climbs up and not down. So basically, this is the cumulative flow diagram. Again, by only looking at it, again, this is again an agile tool. An agile prefers low tech, high touch, the high visibility. So by only looking at this, for instance, at this cumulative flow diagram, I can measure the lead time, which is the time, the average time from that the task takes from being requested to being done, or the cycle time, which is a subset of the lead time, which represents the time from for the task from the time that the team started working on until it is ready to be accepted. So this is cycle time. And then this is the size of the product backlog, for instance. Those are the tasks that are waiting. And then you can measure also the work in progress. So these are the tasks that entered in the second column, but have not yet arrived to the last column, to the done, and so on. So basically, the horizontal tells me the time, and the shorter is the better. The vertical tells me the tasks or the buffer, and when you see it again large, then this means what? Bottlenecks. Okay. We use it usually with Scrum or Kanban boards. It helps me calculate the throughput metrics. So again, how many tasks are we able to process in, for instance, in 14 days or in 10 days? This is what we call the throughput, the number of tasks or the number of user stories we are able to process. The cycle time, the lead time, as I mentioned. We can also use, for instance, quality metrics. So how many defects, for instance, or the percentage of the defects in the project. Earned value, of course. Bar chart can also be used to measure or to track the progress of the project. And the velocity, the speed of the team, as I mentioned. So, for instance, if the average speed of the team is 14 user story, so the team is capable of delivering 14 user story in every iteration, in every sprint. And you might get a question like that. You still have, for instance, 40 user stories. So how many, and every iteration is 2 weeks. You have 40 stories remaining, and every iteration is 2 weeks, and the velocity of the team is 10 user stories. The question might come like, how many weeks do you forecast you still need to finish the project? Now, of course, this is very easy calculation, right? Because you know that you still have 40, and the team can do 10 in every iteration. So basically 40 divided by 10, you need 4 iterations to finish the project. But each iteration is 2 weeks, then you need 8 weeks to finish the project. You might get a question like that in the exam. It's very easy calculation if you understand the velocity again, which is the number of user stories that the team can process in every iteration, the average number, of course. Okay, any questions so far? Okay. Another way that we can use to measure the performance of the project is the value stream map, which basically is a map that we draw in order to track the value flow in the project. So these might be the user stories requested by some business unit, and then they are on a wish list. Then we start progressing them through the different phases. Again, you can design, develop, test, roll out. So I do this map and I track the progress of the value. And I try to check where is the bottleneck. Why is here there is a bottleneck and the tasks are stacking here, for instance? Why we are here slow? How can we improve the flow of value here? And so on. So this is the concept of value stream map. It's not really important for the exam, but you need to understand the concept. So basically, I'm monitoring the flow of value from the day the stories or the tasks were requested to the day where the stories or the tasks were completed through the different stages. And I try to check where are the bottlenecks and how to improve the flow of value through this project. Okay, the value stream, we call it the value stream map. Now, after you decide on which metrics, which measures you need to use and how to use them, which tool, the earned value or the cumulative flow diagram or other tools, you need, of course, to report this to the management. So we need to create performance reports. Performance reports that we need to submit to the management, especially on the meeting reviews, might include, for instance, the percentage of work completed, the quality and technical performance metrics, the start and finish of scheduled activities, change requests that we have received, defects or percentage of defects that we have identified, actual cost variances, earned value indicators, and so on, durations. Work performance data also can be included to generate decisions or to raise issues. Agile projects prefer, again, completed and accepted user stories, product backlog progress, and comparison of stories delivered and iteration plans. So these are the contents of the performance reports that you can include in your performance reports when you submit them to the management. And the performance reports have different shapes, different looks. You can use, for instance, again, information radiators in Agile, burn down or burn up charts. I think we explained them before, where you track the user stories that have been developed over time or the risks that we are tackling over time. Earned value management reports, variance analysis reports, work performance reports, quality reports, dashboards, task boards. All of these can represent various shapes of performance reports that you might want to submit to the management or submit to the customer. Of course, you need to take into consideration the tolerances, the, again, acceptable margins that the management, the customer, the stakeholders don't have a problem with. If we are behind the schedule minus 5% or plus 5%, this is a tolerance, we don't have a problem with that. But if it exceeds that, then we need to take some corrective action. So again, we need to take tolerances into consideration, tolerances in budget, in time, in quality, in non-functional requirements, and so on, when we submit the performance reviews. Okay. 10 minutes break, and we continue to finishing the presentation. Okay, 10 minutes break in order to help you focus more. See you in 10. Welcome back, and with this we concluded the execution and monitoring and controlling of the project, and we arrive at the final, of course, the final stage of our journey, which is closing your project, which includes, of course, obtaining sign-offs, lessons learned, acceptance from the customers or from the stakeholders, concerned stakeholders, and of course, making sure to update the project artifacts and archive them. So let's discuss this in more details. So basically, when you complete and create all the deliverables, all the phase or project, again, deliverables, because remember again that we might have broken down the project into phases, sequential phases or overlapping phases. So closing can happen for phases, for both phases and projects as well. So basically, you need to consider when to close the phase or when to close the project. Now, of course, there are different situations or different scenarios for when you need to close the phase or the project. Of course, the best or the optimum scenario for closing a project is when the project or phase successfully meet its completion objectives. When we create the deliverables and the deliverables are accepted, this is, of course, the optimal scenario when you want to close the project, because we have finished, we have created the deliverables and they are accepted and everything went well. Okay, but there are also other scenarios where you want to close the project or the phase, such as, for instance, when the requirements change during execution and they change in a way that would change the project completely, or the project becomes unfeasible, or we will go beyond the charter, the project charter, which is again cannot be changed. So if we reach that point, then we need to close the project, as I mentioned, because this is now a different project, right? Another scenario is when adequate funding is no longer available. We don't have enough fund to continue with the project, so we need to close it. Another scenario is when significant risks are encountered and that they make the successful completion of the project impossible or probably not possible, then you might also want to consider closing the project. The organization no longer needs the project deliverables. So again, this is another instance of when you might need to close the project. Or external factors that arise that make the project useless. For instance, changes in laws, mergers, acquisitions, global or national economic changes that might cause you to stop the project. So these are different scenarios that might cause the project to stop. And when you stop the project or kill the project, you don't just stop it and go or kill it and go. No, you need to close it properly. You need to close it in a proper way. Stopping the project or killing the project is not something that you do promptly, or you do without planning, or you do by letting go of everything. No, you close it properly and following the steps that we will mention here. Of course, closing requires a formal sign-off or approval, and these come from the stakeholders authorized to do the sign-off and to do the approval for the deliverables and for the closing of the project. Those stakeholders, of course, will make sure that the deliverables meet the compliance requirements, and with that, they can close the project. And again, sign off or approval can happen throughout the project on different phases, okay? After testing and validating the deliverables, as we mentioned when we explained the quality control and the validation of the scope. If there are issues, then there might be warnings for those potential issues or threats for the compliance. And this might require change requests and maybe reworking or correcting a few things before we can close the project. So basically, we need to remediate issues if we have issues in order to be able to close the project. Acceptance is, of course, very important, and deliverables must meet the acceptance criteria that have been identified and listed in the scope statement. So project deliverables will be deemed accepted when these criteria are met. And again, this can take place throughout the project in different phases, and acceptance should be formally also formulated and signed by the concerned stakeholders. I need also to make sure that payments has been made to the suppliers and all contracts have been closed before I can close my project. You cannot close your project if some contracts are not closed. So we need to make sure again that payments are settled, contracts are closed, and then you can proceed to closing your project. Again, you don't wait until the end of the project to close the contracts or close the procurements. You close the contracts or procurement as soon as they finish, and you pay the seller's money as soon as they finish. Of course, also you need to make sure of transition readiness. So the customer is ready to receive the deliverables. This might include the implementation and installation of the product at the customer's side. We need to make sure that the customer is ready, the environment at the customer side is ready, the physical resources are available. For instance, the users are ready to receive the product and start using the product. We might deliver training for the users in order to be able to start using the product. We might also want to help them or train them on how to resolve issues in the product or support the product. So all of this should be made sure of before we can close the product. Of course, if there are any lessons there too, we need to add those as well and deliver them to the customer. So knowledge management is very important. Lessons learned repository that will contain all lessons learned from the project, as well as other projects will be in the PMO, the project management office. And we need to document and archive all project artifacts and make them available at the repository so we can benefit from them in future projects. Again, the lessons learned register might include different categories of lessons learned, such as scheduling lessons learned, conflict management lessons learned, sellers lessons learned, customer lessons learned, strategic lessons learned, tactical lessons learned, any other aspects of lessons learned. With this, you can proceed to closing the project or phase when you are when you make sure that the planned work has been completed and the information has been archived and the project team resources are released to pursue other projects or other endeavors, and all invoices are paid, contracts are closed out, lessons learned and are discussed and documented. And then you conduct a closeout meeting which is a session held at the end of the project, which involves discussing the work and reviewing the lessons learned. This meeting can include different stakeholders, like the team members, the project resources, the customers, and so on, in order to announce a formal closeout for the project. In agile approaches, we do closeouts at every iteration, right? Or at every sprint. And this is what we do in the retrospective meeting. The retrospective meeting is basically a closeout meeting for each sprint that we do in each sprint, where we again, after of course demonstrating the product in the sprint review, we again meet the product owner and probably other stakeholders as well, to discuss what went well, what went bad, how can we improve the performance, how can we, for instance, change the processes to improve the performance, how can we increase the level of collaboration, or any types of lessons learned, again, that can be discussed in the retrospective to improve performance in the next iteration. So this is done on every iteration. Some guidelines to close the project or phase. You need to review the project management plan to make sure that everything that was included in the plan has been done. You can use also a project termination list, checklist, to make sure that all the things that we need to do were done. You need to gather and organize performance measurement documentations. All types of documentations should be updated and archived. Confirm products meet the compliance requirements and the acceptance criteria. Release the resources, update records, update resource pool database, analyze project success and effectiveness. Again, we will need to go back to the definition of success in the charter and indicate whether the project was successful or not. Analyze that. Prepare lessons learned reports and final project report. Sorry. Obtain formal approval from the concerned stakeholders. Archive a complete set of project records, and of course, celebration at the end of the project, and also celebration at the end of this course. So with this, we conclude our course. I hope it was a very beneficial and at the same time interesting journey for you. We will take a few minutes, if you don't mind. I'll just explain to you what are the next steps or how to apply for the exam. So I'll share the screen. Okay. Now that we have concluded the course, what are the next steps? Now, this is my suggestion for you. The next step, the first next step is, if you didn't attend all of the lectures of this course, then please go ahead and review all the lectures. First of all, I strongly suggest that you do a review, a fresh review for all the lectures in a short time span, like for instance, in a week. Try to finish them in a week. So dedicate some time for that in order to listen, to review all the lectures in a week or 10 days. Again, focus on the things that you might have missed or did not attend for a reason or another. So do a fresh and full review. This is the first step. The second step is to start practicing exam questions. Now you can do that from the books that I have included in the material, the Helpman and the Rita, as well as so many resources available on the internet, like this website, which is, I think is a very good website, lovepmp.com. It's a very good source of questions. You can practice from there too. you need to practice at least 1,000 questions in order to get really prepared for the pressure and for, you know, the analysis that you need to do when you are in the real exam, because in the real exam, as you know, you have only limited time with so many questions that need, you know, quick thinking and quick decision making. So you need to practice that a lot. It's not only about what you know, it's also about how you do it, okay, or the efficiency of you. So many people are great at understanding, but are bad in the exam because they did not practice well. They did not practice enough exam questions. So they end up taking a lot time thinking in each question individually, and they run out of time. So basically, you need to practice that. And also, in order to make sure that you have covered all your, you know, gaps that might exist in the knowledge that you have. So practicing question is must. You need to practice at least 1,000 questions, okay? When you practice the questions and review the answers, make sure that you understand why this answer is correct, not the other, okay? So we need to really understand that. Okay, now, when you're ready, and you can start actually from now, to apply for the exam, these are the steps. You go to the PMI website, which is pmi.org, and you start by creating an account. Creating an account is free, of course. You can click on register, provide them with the information that they ask, your name, your email, other things that you might want to include. Now, your name, write your name carefully with the correct spelling in your ID, in English, of course, with other information, and then create your account. Again, creating an account is free of charge. You don't have to pay anything to create your account. Once created, you go ahead and log in to your account, like what I'm doing right here. Just log in using your username and password. So this is step 1. Step 2 is to obtain a membership. Now, obtaining membership, which cost for the first year $139 US, will give you so many benefits. Will give you, of course, a discount on the exam. So instead of paying $555 US for the exam, you will pay $405 for the exam. And of course, if you have a coupon, because they every now and then they issue a coupon, a discount coupon, so you benefit also from the coupon. And you get a discount also for all the other exams as well, and other products like books or webinars that you might attend. So you get discounts on all the products of the PMI. So obtaining membership is a good idea. Okay, so you obtain the membership, you go to membership basically, and you add membership to your account, and you pay the 139 fees, and you become a member. I am a member, so for this I don't have this option here, but you will have this option for purchasing a membership. Okay. The third step is, after you obtain the membership, of course, is that you go to certifications, and you select the project management professional certificate, or the CAPM if you are preparing for CAPM, of course. And then here you will get the application. Now, of course, because I'm certified, I don't get this. But here in the same place, exactly, you will get apply for PMP. This is where you go, and you will they will open an application for you, and you need to put in the information that they request. Again, what is the information requested? It's basically your experience. You need to have 3 years experience in project management, and the course that you took, which is the course that we delivered to you. And the certificates will be ready in a couple of days. We will send you the certificates. Okay, so you do that, and you submit your application. Once you submit your application, basically in 3 to 5 days, you receive one of two things. Either you receive eligibility letter. It means that you are eligible, you can proceed to pay the exam fees and take the exam. They send you a link to pay the fees. They send you a link to choose the date and the place to do the exam. Of course, you can do the exam from a training center or a testing center, or you can do the exam online from at home. I personally advise that you take the exam from a testing center because you won't face problems, you know, with online practice or whatever, or internet issues or whatever. Okay, but if you can't find like a suitable date in testing center, you can take the test at home. Okay, now the other possibility is you might get audited. This happens to like 20% of the people, of the applicants, they are audited. So in this case, they will ask you to send documents from your company or from your manager indicating the projects that you have participated in, as you mentioned in the application, of course. So you'll need to send this and wait, I think, for like a couple of weeks, and then you get the result. Hopefully you won't get audited. If you get audited, then you'll need to send these documents. So some people just create a new account and do the process again in order to, you know, to avoid being audited. Okay, and with this we conclude our course, ladies and gentlemen. I hope really that it was a nice course, interesting course for you, and I hope that I have delivered your expectations. I tried my best, at least. So the WhatsApp group, of course, will continue to exist. If you have any questions, if you need any help, just let me know. And with this, we conclude our lecture. عافاكم الله جميعا وشكرا لكم. Thank you, everyone. It was an honor, of course, hosting you. And hopefully, I will hear good news from you all, passing the exam very soon, inshallah ta'ala. Thanks a lot, everyone, and wishing you a very pleasant and nice evening. وتصبحون على خير. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Thank you, everyone. Take care and bye.